Anya Taylor-Joy is on one side. Thomason is on the other side of the mirror. There's no mirror there. He is on the other side, and he actually has a mirror next to him, so it actually is reflecting him.
Oh, okay.
It's insane, right? Art the clown.
I'm something different.
Hello, friends, and welcome back to another Modern Horror Movie Talk. I'm your host, Tyler Nichols, and Andrew Hatfield is back for another one. Andrew, how you doing?
Hey, I'm doing good, Tyler. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing pretty well because I am a big fan of the director of today's film, so this should be a fun one to cover. But I want to get right into everything, so what you drinking?
I finally bought all the supplies to have a true old fashioned. So I have the restaurant dark cherries in here, and I have the bitters and everything else mixed in. So I finally have like a traditional one. It's probably going to be, my nightly beverage going forward for a while. So
nice.
It looks a little dark, but it's darker. I like the extra cherry syrup on the side. I'm on the sweeter end if I'm mostly in the mood for that. What do you got for us tonight?
So it's fancier than what I have been doing. I got a margarita because it has been very hot here in Michigan, and in particular, hot as hell in my little office. So I wanted something to be able to actually make it through this without sweating like crazy, because I've had a few of these episodes where I am just a ball of sweat by the end. So, and it's like a passion fruit 1800, some kind of limited edition pre-made mix stuff. And usually the pre-made mixes are really sugary. Not this one. Actually pretty decent. I'm shocked at how good it is.
Looks refreshing as heck. So,
and for those that can see, I got a little Jafar shirt as well, because we love things that are more than just horror on this show. But yes, cheers. And cheers to everyone watching as well. So before we actually get into the film today, I've been liking doing these little like history of like what you have, your relationship with the filmmaker or star of the film. And so what's your opinion of Edgar Wright?
Honestly, I don't think he's ever gone wrong for me. And this is going to make me sound like much more of a player than I am, but I took 2 separate dates to Shaun of the Dead. The first date really didn't work out. About a week later, I took a different date also to Shaun of the Dead and fully judged them based on their opinions of that movie. But I didn't know him before. Like, I didn't know Spaced or any of this other stuff. But once he did that, and, you get the full Coronado trilogy and just, things like today's movie that's a little bit outside the box. But yeah, I dig him. He's definitely one of my favorite directors. I got to go see, my wife's cousin works for Sony, so I got to go see what's the action movie from a few years ago with Jamie Foxx and John Hamm?
Baby Driver, yeah.
I got to see that. I got to see the premiere, like red carpet, full thing at the Ace Theater Hotel in Los Angeles, and they had an after party and that. So yeah, I love everything. I wish he could have done Ant-Man, because I know that's one of the big what could have beens. But yeah, huge fan, I guess, big history with him. But yeah, love all of them. What about you?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I remember actually the coverage on Joe Blow for Shaun of the Dead, and it got me very interested. And I've watched it specifically because of Joe Blow's coverage of it and Arrow in the Head's coverage of it. So he's always been someone that has been a big part of my life, because I've mentioned on the show in the past, and I'm like a kind of a serial rewatcher. I like to rewatch stuff. Where Edgar Wright movies are infinitely rewatchable. I have seen Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, and Scott Pilgrim, I don't know, 100 times. I'm probably not even exaggerating. I was probably, especially around college time, I was watching Scott Pilgrim once a week. I loved it so much and still do, because from an editing standpoint, that is just a mind-blowing experience from start to finish. Sound design, just everything about that. You want a lesson in editing, just watch that and be amazed, because there's things that happen in that movie that I still don't know how they did, and that never happens.
Yeah, it shows how good he is. I didn't even mention Scott Pilgrim, but yeah, that's obviously. And again, yeah, I think I've seen every one of his movies in theaters except for today's, which is a bummer. I wanted to. He's one of those few directors that I think I've seen every single one of his movies multiple times, right up there with like a John Carpenter.
I'm jealous that you got to see so many in theaters, because I think the only one of his that I've seen in theaters is Baby Driver, and I loved it.
It was it. His movies have been an event to be able to like. I always look forward to it. This was one of my most anticipated movies of 2021, and I mean, we'll get into our opinions about it. But yeah, I'm excited for whatever he's doing next. I'm sure there's something in the pipeline. I can't think of what it is right now, but
yeah, there's always stuff that gets announced. I feel like he's one of those directors where things get announced and then it ends up falling through. So then it's a hard time. It's hard to keep track of what he's even up to at this point. But yeah, I completely agree with you though. And he's incredible. And obviously, since I also, same as you, had the introduction being Shaun of the Dead, the idea of him going back to horror was always very, very appealing to me, especially going back to a more straight horror, because Shaun of the Dead is obviously horror comedy.
Yes.
So then when Last Night in Soho, because I believe they announced the name first, he's had this script for years and years. I believe he wrote it in 2007. It's a lot to talk about, so let's get into it. We're talking about Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. An aspiring fashion designer is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s, where she encounters a dazzling wannabe singer. But the glamour is not all it appears to be, and the dreams of the past start to crack and splinter into something darker. Non-spoilers talk, we'll get into a little bit of stuff, and then spoiler to get more into the, brunt of it. But Andrew, what'd you think?
I loved it. Without giving too much away, he's a huge Dario Argento fan, like always has been. And this it's a blend, because there are parts of this that we'll get into that are very much a giallo, and then there are parts of this that very much fall into that supernatural horror, like almost like Phenomena. Phenomena is a giallo, but it's also got the supernatural telekinesis. Best use of chimpanzee with a razor blade in film. But yeah, this is his I hate the term, and I know other people hate the term, but it is his love letter, I think, to Argento's films. And I love that he was able to mix both those styles into it. Loved the acting, set design, the costume design, the story itself, just everything is awesome.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you had seen Jojo Rabbit before Last Night in Soho, but that was where I was introduced to Thomasin McKenzie. She is just so good in this movie, and I think that I'm just glad that she seems to just be hitting in a way that I never expected her to. I thought she would be a lot more niche, and she is just blowing up. And it's movies like that, like this, which just solidify how smart that decision is of these of Hollywood to put any kind of money behind her name, because she's, despite the fact that we don't see many leading ladies that have like a prominent non-sexy like English accent. Like I'm trying to not even English. I'm trying to even she's speaking the English language, and it's an accent that is not considered, it's not something that you hear that then you automatically, it's like Australian or Welsh, Scottish. Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
But these different things that then usually this is more of like a character actor's voice. So then I love that it's not that she's not just, I don't know, boxed in to just side roles, because she absolutely is incredible in this film, and I can't say enough good things about her.
No, and she's so non-traditional in terms of what you would see as a leading lady, and I know it's not a slasher film, but in terms of what a final girl would be. And it's funny because they use, I think this is one of Diana Rigg's final roles, but she is a classic Hammer and classic 60s. I mean, she was in the Avengers, of course, the TV show, not what has taken cinema by storm. I feel like
most famously, she is on Her Majesty's Secret Service. I mean, come on,
she's Tracy Bond.
Yeah.
Or I guess if you want to go today's audience, they don't watch any of that. She's Game of Thrones. Tell Cersei it was me.
So
I want her to know,
That's the whole reason I bring it up, because I knew her from that, and then I saw her on Her Majesty's Secret Service and was like, oh my God, I'm in love. Oh, wait a minute. It's the old lady from Game of Thrones. Oh my God. I guess I'm into really older women.
Hey, there's a lot of people out there that'll give their left arm for a date with Helen Mirren. So you know what? It's not that abnormal. Okay.
I mean, heck, have you seen that chemistry that she has with Vin Diesel? I mean, come on.
One can only hope for that in their lifetime, right?
If only. But also, I mean, what do you think of Anya Taylor-Joy? Because I feel like she's like been such a big actress over the last few years.
Oh, I'm a huge fan of her. She's apart from her gorgeous giant eyes, she's a little bit more classic, beautiful actress.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I loved her in that chess miniseries on Netflix.
Queen's Gambit, yes.
Queen's Gambit. She's great in The Menu. She was great in the M. Night movie that I forgot when we were discussing M. Night movies.
Split.
She's in Split. No, I'm a huge fan of her in I think everything I've seen, except for New Mutants. Even she and her weird Russian accent couldn't save that movie. I just made a PTSD pop into Tyler's brain, I think, when I mentioned that movie.
You mentioning that is the first time I've thought about that movie since I watched it. It's that forgettable. And the main thing that I'm remembering is the goddamn smoke fog dog thing. That's like the big bad. Oh God, yeah.
It's a Nightmare on Elm Street X-Men edition, essentially, is what that movie's trying to be. And it could have been a lot better, but I saw that in theaters too, which was a mistake, if I'm being honest. But
oh God.
Yeah. Me and my buddy would base our movie watching schedule on like our schedules. Like, well, what's playing? Oh God, here's our time frame. It's like, well, New Mutants it is. And you bond over bad experiences. So
that is very true. In terms of just overall thoughts on the movie, you enjoyed it. Is there anything that stood out in particular that you think it's something that would get someone to watch this movie that has no interest in it?
Just how aesthetically and visually pleasing it is. I think it hits on so many different genres. Like, I probably scare people off by saying giallo or Italian horror, and I'm not meaning to, because while it's not a comedy like Shaun of the Dead, it has tons of funny lines and moments in it. I know we're going to get into spoilers later, but there is a bit of a mystery behind it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the mystery is compelling. The everyman feel, especially of Thomasin McKenzie's character, draws you in just from her experience in school as an outcast, her trauma as a child. I just think it's a very compelling everyday story. Sure, it brings in some supernatural elements, but I think the story is very relatable. It's not scary, I don't think. So I don't think it would, if you don't like scary movies, I don't think you're going to go wrong with this either. But am I missing anything? Am I off on that?
Oh, I would completely agree. It's a story about a person that is trying to build her life. I mean, it's someone who's going on. This is something that so many people can relate to in terms of once you finish up high school, you have to decide how you're going to then go off and build your life. And that's what she has to do in this. And it's really about her finding her identity. I think that it's very interesting because I mean, I've done it myself. I've seen other people do it where they attach to like the 60s, they attach to the 80s, they just attach to different decades that then helps to inform a lot of their personality. And so I think that despite, like you were saying, there are supernatural elements, but at its core, the film is just so human. And I think that that's what's very appealing. So one thing that I will say is that I watched the film with commentary because I think I've watched this movie like 4 times since I got it on 4K, like around this time last year. So I was like, I don't know in terms of watching the full film again, because I think I watched it like a month and a half ago, probably. So I watched it with commentary, and there were some real interesting things because it was Edgar Wright, the editor, and the composer. Because sometimes commentary tracks can be a little, if it's actors, then it's, I don't know. Sometimes it can just not be interesting information. It can just be like, people fucking around. But this actually had a lot of interesting information that I didn't expect, including the fact that Anya Taylor-Joy was the session singer for the score. So
Wow.
when someone, like, when they record a score, they usually will have like a singer there to then be able to do things like like just little flourishes and stuff. Yes, they're like, well, I think it'd be a good idea. I can't remember if it was Wright or I think it was the composer who thought of it, of like just having little hints of her, and just asked her if she would be cool with doing it. And she was 100% on board. Not only that, but apparently she was like coming up with ideas, doing notes and stuff, where then her ideas are utilized in terms of when it is Thomas and Mackenzie, you'll hear little bits of Anya Taylor-Joy's voice like float past her. And there's little things that I haven't been able to see this movie in a movie theater. So I haven't gotten that benefit of just the surround sound being that good, because I'm in a townhouse. I don't have amazing surround sound. I have a sound bar. Like,
sure, it's a little different than the theater going experience for sure.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I commentary, and I mean, you and I have talked about this. Sometimes commentary gives you the insight on things that really tie everything together. Personally, I do enjoy, BSing commentary, the one with Kurt Russell and John Carpenter, where you can hear them lighting cigarettes and smoking and talking about the thing, is an all-time favorite. But something like this, and especially with, I mean, it's hard to say, and I think this is my favorite Edgar Wright movie, but it's because it hits on all cylinders, and it's the score and the cinematography and the direction and everyone doing their job in costume, makeup, and set design, like all that stuff. I would love to hear the thought process behind it.
You gotta listen to that. You gotta listen to that commentary. You'll be blown away. Do you have it? Do you own it?
I do. I haven't. It's been a while. Like, I mean, yeah, I know. I have that one. It's one of the first 4Ks that I bought. Actually,
nice. It's a nice one.
It's been harder lately to go back and rewatch movies as much, especially with what you and I do for a living.
Yeah.
in talking about movies. I did rewatch it, but I wanted to watch it without the commentary. I wanted to just rewatch the movie coming into this conversation. But you gave me the itch, so I'm pretty sure either tonight or when I get back from a trip later this week, I'll plug that guy back in and listen to it.
Yeah, well, we should also say, too, that you have young children, so that also changes things in terms of rewatching, because I don't have any kids. Like, I'm a single bachelor I have trying to fill my day with things. So, like, I am like, oh, hey, yeah, I'll watch Last Night in Soho for the 5th time this month. That's how I've watched Scream 6 probably 5 different times on Paramount Plus since it's been out, because it is I'm going through a bit of insomnia currently, and every time I'm convinced that I'll be able to fall asleep to it, and every time I watch it from beginning to end.
When the wife takes the kids out of town every now and then, that's just a full-on movie marathon nonstop for however many days it's gone. And I try to mix them in. I'll try to watch stuff that she has zero interest in. Although she did watch this with me back the first go around, and she really liked it as well. But yeah, and I throw in some. I watch tons of new stuff, but I'll throw in some comfort food, as I always call it. As for us, movies are comfort food. But anything else? Is there any other cool things on the disc? Any featurettes or anything that you've gotten to yet?
I was shocked at the sheer amount of things that were done in camera. Pretty much everything was done in camera, where they just then would do enhancements. So a lot of the mirror tricks, it's all done in camera. That then essentially they show there's a dancing scene with Matt Smith and Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomas and Mackenzie, and Thomas and Mackenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy like switch places in it. Mm-hmm. There is one cut in that, and it's one that it would have been physically impossible because she transforms into, otherwise it is just Anya being off screen and getting switched in, Thomason being off screen, being switched in. And I had no idea, because I thought for sure they do oneers all the time where you can see the cut and the stitch where they did it. And so I just assumed that it was that again, but nope. It's not, and it's phenomenal. Like, it's so good because the whole thing is that Anya Taylor-Joy is on one side, Thomason is on the other side of the mirror. There's no mirror there. He is on the other side, and he actually has a mirror next to him, so it actually is reflecting him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so Thomason has a green screen behind her that they were, what did they call it? There was some term for the cameras that was like essentially just gets the perspective from a mirror shot. So, but then you can't see the actual camera. They're able to transpose that with green screen, and yeah, it was fascinating because I thought they did the simple trick that they didn't do.
That's awesome. I love hearing stuff like that. And I mean, big practical effects. I mean, CGI would have looked weird in that scene, but the fact that they were able to do it, not even practical effects, just without the use of cuts, is kind of incredible.
Well, and there's another thing too where Thomasin McKenzie walks through the alley and comes out, and it's like it's her walking out for the first time. Yeah. And the lights blare. There's this song playing that then like just explodes in that moment. They recreated that exact song where it was recorded at Abbey Road with the same everything, and literally just ramped it up in that moment where it's like, yeah, it's the normal track, and then they blow it up with a huge orchestra, and it's incredible. I wondered, like, watching it for the first time, think like, oh, how did they just throw some kind of effect on there? Nope, of course they re-recorded it at actual Abbey Road.
This is starting to make sense on how high the budget was now that we talked about earlier, with because this stuff, yes, granted, CGI, computer, all that stuff costs money, but so does shooting these grandiose scenes and using the proper film and hiring the right people. So that totally makes sense. And I guess I kind of don't, and I think you agree, I kind of don't want to get into the weeds too much about exact plot points, just for people that maybe haven't seen this, because watching it the first time is awesome. But it was, and it's COVID related, but it was definitely not successful in its run, unfortunately. And that hurts my heart a little bit, because I know almost all of his other stuff was very successful. You know, this one deserved it above all else. It did get a couple BAFTAs, I read, but yeah, it did not fare well financially, unfortunately.
And honestly, this might be a reason that we don't know what Edgar Wright is up to next. Unfortunately, that is a thing and Baby Driver did fine, but it did good enough where there was even rumors of a sequel.
Right.
Then the Kevin Spacey stuff happened, and so then the crap, what is his name? Anton something? The kid?
20 minutes later.
Ansel Elgort. It's Ansel Elgort.
That's right.
No wonder I don't fucking know his name, because the only times I've ever seen those names are when I'm reading Ansel Elgort's name, because
it's like the kid from Solo, the Aiden
Eidenreich.
Eidenreich, yeah. Those two names would be interchangeable for me, because I don't ever think about those names unless I'm talking about those specific people. But
he is in the Coen brothers, was that Caesar movie that is Hail Caesar, that is so good. Anyone that wants to see a fantastic Coen brothers movie that did not get a fair shake, please check out Hail Caesar, because that movie is
one of my favorite Josh Brolin roles ever as the Hollywood enforcer.
It's so good. But okay, so another thing that I want to talk about with this is just how amazing Diana Rigg is, because there's moments that I wanted more of her, and if anything, because she's just phenomenal. There's stuff that happens in the end that then it just kind of solidifies her as being just such a great actress. And another person that we haven't talked about yet is Terrence Stamp. Haven't even mentioned him. He is awesome in this movie.
And this is, apart from maybe The Limey, this is one of his most subdued roles that I've seen him in. And he's very good in this, to your point.
Yeah, very subdued, very slimy, even though he's not. Like you think he's slimy, like, but he's not really slimy.
One of my favorite parts about the movie is the misdirection. Speaking of thinking people are slimy, but yeah, I mean he's not a great person, but he's not as bad as you're set up to believe that he is necessarily.
Yeah, he's still like a creep, like would hook up with Thomas and Mackenzie if he could, even though he's like 60 years her senior. But like,
yes.
So it's like, yeah, he's not great, but he's still he's better than what we think he is.
Yeah, it's better than one of the characters ends up being, at least in the movie.
Yeah, and so there is. I'm gonna say right now, because I know there are people that then still watching the spoilers, even if they haven't seen it. If you haven't seen this movie, stop. I'm going to spoil the end of this movie because I have to talk about it, because it's my one negative for this film, is that I think that the twist is handled very oddly. And even in the commentary, Edgar Wright acknowledges it. And even he mentions how Christopher McQuarrie, who did like Usual Suspects, he wrote the Usual Suspects script, and obviously he does all those Mission Impossible movies. Yep. He questioned Edgar Wright because he was like, why did you reveal the twist right before the reveal? You like softly reveal it right before the hard reveal.
Right.
And Wright like does that on purpose. Because, what was the scene? There was some other movie that he was that he liked it, like that happening in, that then he wanted to kind of emulate that. And it's just, it works fine. But then I want that moment without just the little bit of tease, just to see, like, I want just that what the fuck moment, rather than like the slowly like, which is what I think it ends up being, at least for me.
No, I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of really only a couple negatives I have. They do it about 5 minutes before it's revealed. And so there's that space where and you're waiting for everyone else to know. So you're almost not paying attention to what's going on in that time frame. Personally, I think this movie is just a hair too long. That's my only other complaint. There's probably maybe 10 minutes you can cut out, and that's certainly the minor reveal before the major reveal is certainly one of them. Mm-hmm. And I guess, we told people to go away, but it would have been just better to hear it only from Diana Rigg.
Yeah.
Just what a powerful moment that would have been on its own. It is still a very cool twist, and it really recontextualizes the entire movie, both while you're sitting there and then when you're going back and rewatching it, because I was looking at stuff
second viewing is like a whole different viewing.
Yeah. And especially just how awful it sets up men in this movie to be. And then sure, they're not great. They're stereotypical 1960s jerk guys, but they're not quite the villain of this story. Yeah, and then it also just goes back to you genuinely feel, and for a second I honestly wasn't convinced that our main character was going to live. and I thought they did a good job setting that up with her mom committing suicide too. Yeah. Just her not being able to get to where she needed to go and make it. But yeah, I do agree that could have been handled slightly better.
Yeah, and there's actually, that was a moment that Edgar Wright talked about, was how there's like a time in the whole ending struggle where, is it Ellie and Sandy? Those are the two character names, right? Thomason is Ellie, and then Anya is Sandy.
Yes.
Then Diana Rigg is Sandy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're both Sandy. It's just
But so then during that little struggle upstairs, it has Anya Taylor-Joy as Sandy trying to choke her out. I found out from the commentary that is because it was originally Diana Rigg, and she hated how it looked in the shot. Like, she said, "Oh, that looks awful." Because I assume like she died like months later, so I'm sure she probably just looked unconvincing and frail, so she's probably thought it looked bad. And so Edgar Wright, in the edit, she had already passed, and he was like, I can't use this. She hated it. Like, So
Yeah.
then he did a reshoot with Anya Taylor-Joy, and it works because obviously that parallel, it wouldn't have worked in so many other, he had the one out where it's like, oh, well, yeah, I mean, technically you can just use her. It's crazy because for most circumstances where the actor dies, you don't really have the situation where it's like, okay, I know that your 80-year-old actress died, but we have this 22-year-old to replace her. Don't worry. And it works and it's great. So I do think it's interesting, though, that this is your favorite Edgar Wright movie, because I would say that this movie has a ton of Italian horror influence. So I'm not surprised at all that you are a big fan of this.
No, and even I think before this, his one that felt most like a Hammer movie to me would have been Hot Fuzz. Not in the horror, but like, at the end of that, when he finds out they're all part of that silly cult that needs to keep the HOA down and stuff like that. As silly as it is, that seems like it would be, a twisted version of a Hammer plot. But there is a lot of that in here too. This is a proper British suspense horror film.
His most Hammer thing is Don't. That's true. Grindhouse trailer.
the trailer. And there's no gothic horror in this, but it does parts of it, because their non-gothic ones did feel very contemporary. Yeah. Especially they're like thriller ones. But no, this is shocker that I like one with a lot of Italian horror themes. I know like I said last time we were talking about your disdain for Apostle. I'm an easy mark in some things. So that one had folk horror, and that's my jam. And Italian horror is also my jam. So I loved it. I wish we could see it. It's speaking of which, like Mike Flanagan said, his new show is the closest he'll ever get to a giallo. I remember seeing him quoted saying that for his Usher series that's hopefully coming out soon.
House of Usher.
I would love to see Edgar Wright dip his toe. He won't do it because it's his most recent movie now is a horror movie. So I'd imagine he'll go in a different direction. But
I just want to say that I talked to Rahul Kohli about House of Usher, like at this point, 5-6 months ago, and he thought they were going to like be releasing something like a trailer soon, and that was ages ago. And he talked this up so much, and everyone that's been a part of this production has talked it up and has said how amazing it is. Where then it's like, it's kind of like Salem's Lot, where I'm like, well, no, that hasn't really been getting praise, but where I'm just like, where is it? Where is it?
Yeah.
Where are these things?
Where does this rank for Edgar Wright for you?
I absolutely love this movie and would consider it to be pretty high on my Edgar Wright list. However, Edgar Wright is just like so high for me. I mean, Hot Fuzz, that's a 10. Scott Pilgrim, that's a 10. Shaun of the Dead, that's a 10. So he's just an upper echelon director. Even Baby Driver for me is a 9. My lowest for him is At World's End with a 7. So it's like his floor is still very high, and I've wavered on this a little bit. Some of the supernatural stuff towards the end just kind of, I've watched it with others and shown it to others, and that's where it loses people. So I think that there's just elements of it that don't work, and that are, I remember watching it with someone where they laughed the moment that they like showed, especially like it was the faces, whether all the dead guys are just standing there and
in the room.
Yep. I know what Edgar Wright's going for with that Italian horror aesthetic, but my friends aren't going to give a shit about this or that. So it is one of those movies where I recommended this to so many people where then I got too many like tepid responses back, where then it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll stop recommending that because I need to stop hearing that. But I would give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's very, very good. I can see because I think when I first saw it, it was a 9. So it's like, I can see it going back up there. But as of right now, because of just how I'm feeling, 8 out of 10. What about you?
Oh, I'm going to say screw other people. It's a 9 out of 10. And it's as Lance would say, it's a strong 9 out of 10 for me. The only reason is it's, I don't think it has quite the rewatchability as some of his other movies. I might prefer it. So this is a very abstract comparison, but let's say Schindler's List is probably Spielberg's best film, but I'm not going to pop that bad boy in as much as I'm going to pop in Jurassic Park. Like I like this movie more than anything else, but it's not something I can watch with the same frequency that I can watch Shaun of the Dead or Scott Pilgrim or even a Baby Driver that is light action, separate the art from the artist Kevin Spacey. Like, this is something I will crack open like a nice bottle of beer or wine every few years and really savor it. But no, it's a hard 9 for me.
Edgar Wright is one of those people that, I mean, I have short films where I've totally ripped off his like editing style, and where Edgar Wright is a very big influence for me. Edgar Wright, John Carpenter, where they just have a certain visual style that then I look for in so many other films. And in fact, they are a big reason that then it made me like start looking at cinematographers. So I'm like, oh, I love how this looks, but obviously it's because of this, like cinematographer did something. So then it's like, the reason I love John Carpenter movies so much is because, and the look of them is Bill Cundy. Cundy is so fucking amazing. And the reason I love Edgar Wright movies, and I say this even though he didn't do Last Night in Soho, Bill Pope has done so many of Edgar Wright's films. I look out for his name. He also did, I think, like the Matrix movies, and he's done a ton of stuff. So then Edgar Wright is one of those people that I would struggle to even have a conversation with because he means so much to me in that just the respect level. He's doing what all of us as movie fans wish that we could do, and he's doing it so well. Because I'm not sure if you ever see his like end of the year list of all the movies that he's watched, but every time I see it, I'm always just like, I'm not doing my part as a movie fan.
Yeah, and he posts on Instagram, like he'll have a big fat stack of physical DVDs and or Blu-rays, which is also super cool for guys like us who are collectors. And the way he talks about movies is way less self-important or cocky than some of his contemporaries that are also very big film nerds, but they come off a little bit snobbish or anything. He loves film. When you get a John Carpenter movie, most of the time you get his collective. So you get Alan Howarth, doing music with him. You get Dean Cundy shooting things with him. You get Deborah Hill producing, and you get those little touches from all those people. And Edgar Wright seems to use a lot of the same people. I mean, obviously Simon Pegg and that, but his behind the scenes people too. Yeah,
and Nira Park is one that should mention. Nira Park is his producer, and he always brings her up in terms of
credits her. She co-wrote this, right? Or am I thinking of somebody else?
Cairns co.
Yeah. Okay, that's right.
The girl that did 1917. Which that's one thing that maybe it might just be one of the other specials that I didn't get to. I am really curious as to why he wrote this with someone. If it wanted a female perspective or what the deal was, because I think he is such a strong writer, so it makes me curious as to why he would want to co-write. But obviously the result was fantastic, so I can't really fault him for it. But
no.
All right, so I think we pretty much have talked everything we can about Last Night in Soho, and so that's pretty much all for this episode. And next week, this is a movie that I am very, very excited to see because it got some pretty big buzz from CinemaCon. And so we will be covering Stephen King's The Boogeyman. Guess to be determined. But I'm very excited for that one because it just looks very, very cool. I know that talked about it a little bit on the last episode with Bumbray because he actually got to see it at CinemaCon. And I know he seemed to be a little like lesser on it, but I think that's okay. I think it's still going to be a fun time. Bumbray's not like crazy into horror in terms of the stupider horror things, which I think this might be in terms of just the dumb. It'll have good moments, but I think there's just going to be some dumb moments. Kind of like, I kind of view it as like the Insidious. It's like, I really like Insidious, but has some dumb moments. So I don't know about
popcorn.
Yeah, popcorn horror. So that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. And it's got to be better than the 2005 movie, The Boogeyman.
Well, and the short story is super dark, and there's a short film that's free on YouTube. That's a half of the Boogeyman was the first filmed Stephen King adaptation, and it's like 27 minutes or something. And it went on a VHS with another movie that I don't remember what that one was, but you can look up the original shot one. It's got one actor that I recognize. I swear it's one of the guys from Army of Darkness, one of the medieval guys.
Really?
But yeah. So if they do it like the short story, it's going to be dark, but the previews look kind of popcorny. So I'm very curious to see. But yeah, it can't be worse than the 2005 or whatever that one.
The guy from Seventh Heaven.
Yeah. I saw that in theaters.
So did I.
Oh my god.
Well, to be fair, I had the excuse of being like a middle schooler at the time, so it was like I feel like that's okay to have seen the Boogeyman. I'm sure I was scared too seeing it back then. Who the hell knows? I would be embarrassed to even see that movie nowadays, because I would then be like, oh my god, this actually kind of scared me as a kid. What was wrong with me?
Well, and I was working at Blockbuster at the time, and then they made a part 2 and a part 3 that were both straight to video.
Oh, well, you guys know what we got coming up on Joe Blow Horror.
Uh-huh.
We're going to be covering some. Yeah, right. Just don't hold me to that. That was a joke.
Please don't ask for that in the comments.
But yeah, that's really all for this week. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me and talking some Edgar Wright. And yeah, we will see you guys in the next episode. Goodbye.